Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I have my fantastic co-host
What
here.
up, beautiful people? My name is Eddie Nicholas, and welcome to Capital Radio 91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sedan. Boom, 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 boom. Adam, we haven't spoken in a couple of days. What's going on in the music world?
I don't even know where to begin, but first, let me let our listeners and viewers know that the Freedom Radio Hour is here, not only giving you fantastic music, the set tonight has been amazing, but we're also giving you that music business news and trends from around the globe. Our goal here, I think, is if you're a DJ, a producer, a singer, a songwriter, or just a music enthusiast, I think this is the show for you because we're trying to tell you what's happening in the music game and telling you like it is, right? Mm-hmm. Well, anyhow, I don't know where to begin, but let's start from the top. So this week, let's talk about Mr. Jimmy Iovine. Do you know who Jimmy Iovine is?
No. Who is Jimmy Iovine?
Okay, so Jimmy Iovine is a very influential person in the music business.
Okay.
First and foremost, he was one of the co-founders of Interscope Records.
Okay.
Interscope boasts Eminem, Mary J. Blige now, Gwen Stefani, no doubt, all of them. It goes deeper and deeper. Lady Gaga. So Interscope was really, really important. But he went on to partner with Dr. Dre in 2006, and they co-founded Beats Electronics. Okay, and then Beats Electronics got sold to Apple Music, and they sold it for $3 billion smackers. So it's like you and I develop a headphone brand or something, and then we get our monies together, and somebody buys it by the tune of $3 billion. So this became real important. So. No surprise that Jimmy Iovine left Interscope and he signed up with Apple Music when they did their subscription thing. Because, we've been talking at length about what's happening in streaming media. Right now, we're at the bit of what we're calling the streaming wars. Why? Because there are a lot of services out there that want your $10 a month, your $20 a month, and they're fighting for that dollar. And the problem here is this week, we realized that Jimmy Iovine was interviewed at a Vanity Fair summit in San Francisco, and he said some blistering things about Spotify, no surprise, because he wasn't going to say anything shady about Apple Music. So he said a few things that I think we should cover. First and foremost, I think he spoke about the fact that the freemium model was really the biggest problem in the music game. It was needed at one time, but now it's something that he's quite displeased about.
He should have been displeased when they was selling records for 99 cents, because I know that's probably part of the reason why he left Interscope, because Interscope probably ain't making in the dollars that they used to make. And see, these people kill me. I'm sorry. I digress. Go ahead.
Well, he's saying that the freemium models really killed the album and all that. And you and I have talked about this in previous episodes, that we are aware of this, Mr. Iovine. But where were you at the onslaught when digitization of music occurred, fighting or getting the best deal for us artists with iTunes and with Apple Music then? Now that you're down with them $3 billion later, it's quite funny that Mr. Iovine made that comment. It's not untrue that to a certain degree, the free model kills what we're doing in terms of making music, because we've already discussed at length that at the free tier that Spotify offers, it's not like a trial thing, it's a free thing that you could sign up for, and just for a certain amount of time or a certain number of files, you could go ahead and stream as much as you want for free. And Eddie and I, as artists on Spotify, would not see any money for our music being streamed at that time. And over time, companies like Spotify have billions of dollars in worth amassed on the backs of artists like Eddie and I. So we're here at the Freedom Radio Hour to talk about how is that to be and what we can do to fight that. I'm going to give you some more comments about what Mr. Iovine had to say during this interview. We're going to take a quick break, but don't you know, he came for Spotify, he came for YouTube, and he had a lot to say about the future of music. And I think some of it I want to get your thoughts on, Mr. Nicholas. Let's take a break and we'll come back. Where?
Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What a beautiful people, and welcome back to Capital Radio 91.6 FM. I'm one of your hosts, Eddie Nicholas, and I'm here with my good buddy and pal, the one and only
Adam Cruz. We're live and direct right here on the Freedom Radio Hour, your number one source for music, business news, and trends from around the globe. Before we broke, we were talking about Mr. Jimmy Iovine. Quick recap, he's the guy who co-founded Interscope Records. They boast Lady Gaga, Eminem, No Doubt, and many others. But since then, he's left Interscope, and he's now been hired by Apple Music. They're in the middle of a streaming war, Apple Music, between them, Spotify, Pandora, and Tidal. Those are the biggest music streaming services that exist right now in the U.S. and arguably around the globe. But in the U.S., there's a lot that's happening. You know, there's statistics recently we've talked about from Nielsen that broke down that 3.9 billion files were streamed last year over the internet. Of that 3.9 billion, 1.8 of it is audio, so music. The other more than 2 billion of it is actually video streams. So that tells us that by and large, people are accessing streamed material via website. The biggest website I can think of is YouTube. So YouTube really has been, while they're under fire by, say, artists, because you know that Pharrell, from his hit song Happy, got a check for something paltry like $9,600 over millions and millions and millions of streams, and he's in the process of suing YouTube. We'll give you an update on future episodes to tell you what the latest is around that lawsuit. But anyway, Nielsen is basically letting everyone know that there's a lot of streaming going on. Almost 4 billion files are streamed. So people are consuming media.
But people are buying.
But they aren't paying for it. So going back to Mr. Iovine's interview in San Francisco, he attended the Vanity Fair Summit. And at that summit, he was interviewed, and he had a lot of things to say. Of course, because he's one of the guys behind Apple Music, he's not going to say anything disparaging about Apple Music, although he let it slip that they had a couple things they had to work on.
But he still walked away with a couple of $1 billion.
$3 billion. Him and Dr. Dre.
Let's not forget that.
Yes. Well, so that was a really great interview, because he said, amongst other things, that the freemium model that exists within Spotify's business is what killed the LP and is what's killing income for artists, because as we've already talked about, we only get a fraction of a penny per stream. Mr. Iovine also talked about the importance of trying to get this was the biggest thing. I was blown away by this, and I want to get your thoughts. He was talking about the importance of trying to marry culture and technology. He's saying our biggest problems here is that streaming music services like Spotify are utilities, and we don't have yet the kind of service that marries utility with culture. And now you and I, when we really think about that, technology and culture, what he's arguing is that Apple Music is trying to give you both the utility and culture.
Okay. What do we mean by culture? I need clarification on culture.
Let me give you for instance.
In this particular matter, you know, because we're talking about culture, we're talking about a race of people, we're talking about a class of people, we're talking about the house music culture, we're talking about the R&B culture.
We're talking about music culture right now. What we're saying is, like in hip-hop, let's talk about hip-hop, or even in-house music. The reason why these genres of music or these subgenres started to popularize was that there was a trifecta, a series of things that came and converged that together created a culture. For hip hop, we know it was music, it was fashion, it was a way of speaking, it was where you dwelled, it was where you represented, where you're from. All of those things together, and the exchange of people in the community over these same like-minded principles around the music created a culture. But the key word here is people, community, you and I touching each other. This is before digital music, right? So culture was able to thrive out of the music because you had all these things converging. Now, how do you get culture in a digital world? Because all that we ever have are links to go buy Eddie's new record, go buy Adam's new record, and place a link on our various social media accounts, to reach, right? But what Mr. Iovine is challenging us to think about is, how do we marry technology with culture? What do you think? How do you make it so that people feel like they're connecting with you when we're talking a virtual space here? This is not personal, not touching. This is virtual.
All of that is a bunch of crap.
Why do you say that?
You know, I say that for the mere fact that All those things have always been interconnected. They are still
but
interconnected.
Hip hop wouldn't have thrived in a digital world if it came to be now. Why? Because there was a personal touch to it.
All that stuff has personal touch, but right now, because everything has moved into a digital realm, now you're looking at throwing us up in holograms and all of that type of nonsense, and bringing forth those type of specs. All of it is still combined, but it's how do you make money from the combination?
Right. I'm with you on the following point. I feel like he's spinning it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because culture and music you cannot have music without having culture. Some type of culture, because it has to be.
Well, he's saying the other way. He's saying you can't have you can't have music without culture, the other way. So why he's saying that is because you need to have people come together and need to have a few things in place, like fashion, language, meeting places. All these things are physical and proximity, not virtual. He's saying Apple Music is here to try to give you both. And he's saying no other service, no Spotify, no Pandora, no YouTube is giving you that feeling. I do agree with the following thing. I do feel like the digitization of music increased and exacerbated the problem of impersonal interaction. So the more that you became more digital, the more you didn't want to see people face to face. We're in an era now where the phone, most of the exchange, people are looking
on their
down.
phones.
They're on their phone. They're not even exchanging with you in person. So how do you get, so the question again is, in house music, let's say, how do you inject culture into the music in a virtual space? I think it's because you take the online off. Meaning you encourage people to buy your product, but you also encourage them to go to your live event. Eddie, for example, Eddie has an event coming up at the Warehouse here in Newark, where he is promoting an event November 1st.
November 8th.
Oh, November 8th. Thank you. And so what he does is he uses social media, but also his physical interactions with other people in this community and this network to remind folks about his event. I argue that it's important to have both an online and an offline presence, but I don't know that we could have it all, say, online or all offline. I think you need both.
You need both. Yeah, you need a combination of both.
I feel like that too. Let's take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a few more points that Mr. Iovine had to say, and I think it's just really telling about what we're going to do in the future. Right now, where?
Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
Freedom Radio Hour.
And we're back live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sudan. Live on the Freedom Radio Hour, we're talking about music, business news, and trends from around the globe. Before we broke at it, we were talking about Mr. Jimmy Iovine. For those that don't know, he was the co-founder of Interscope Records. He's not there anymore. Now he's been hired by Apple Music after $3 billion. They didn't pay him specifically $3 billion to hire him. They acquired the company that he founded with Dr. Dre called Beats Electronics, and it was sold to Apple Music for $3 billion. So a lot of the reports that come out and say how Apple put their $3 billion together to hire Jimmy Iovine. Anyhow, we were talking about a recent interview that he was a part of in San Francisco at the Vanity Fair Summit, where he talked quite negatively about companies like Spotify. Before we broke, we were talking about this problem that Mr. Iovine is posing for the wider world and how we consume media. He's saying that companies like Spotify and Pandora are utilities, something you use, but that there's no culture.
Well, so is Apple.
Well, I feel like this. I feel like you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Okay.
I want to give the background on something. Whether we like to admit it or not, streaming media and streaming music in particular marginalized digital music piracy. Before streaming media came around, piracy was at its sky highest. Every survey that was conducted, every research conducted, all said the same thing, that people are out of control, illegally downloading or accessing music that's not making the artist any money. So in comes streaming media, and companies like Spotify, YouTube, Pandora, and now Apple Music and Tidal are all come up with the same idea to use subscription bases, your $10 a month, advertising, and marketing to put these things together to make an empire. But it can't happen without the backs of the artists. So all we're saying is we want our fair share of the revenue. Right now, the Nielsen reports came back last year, 3.9 billion files were streamed. Of those, 1.8 was audio, over 2 billion was video. So people are accessing even music in video form. That means on YouTube by and large. If you think of the biggest outfit.
You know, because again, you know, he's talking about the connection. The connection is already your music and the face.
Right,
and
but he's saying that right now people, because they're so into their phone, that he wants to give you culture and utility together. But I feel like one can't really do both right now. Why? Because if it was a utility, which it is, it really marginalized digital music piracy. It doesn't mean that it's gone now. It just means that all the reports came back that there was a sharp drop after streaming media came to be, because people didn't have to pay nothing. All you have to do is search your favorite song and you could listen.
And you could listen to it.
You know, and so Apple is saying, well, we didn't have a free tier like Spotify. We have a free trial. But remember, we talked in past episodes that Apple was kind of banking on all of those that signed up when the service first premiered to stay on after that 3-month trial. And more than 48% of them
left.
So what does that say? We keep saying that people just want this stuff for free. And we're, as the artists, we're saying we can't give it to you for free if you're going to want us to keep making it. If you don't want us to make it anymore, then yeah, you could have it for free, and then that'll end the careers of all artists. It kind of brings me back to one of his other points. During the interview, Mr. Iovine also mentioned that as an industry, that we no longer have superstars anymore. We don't have the
who are them Taylor Swifts and them Beyoncés and
well, he's saying that we're at the ends now. We're at the end. Why? Is it because it's harder than ever, if you're a label head, Mr. Iovine argues, to get them to come into the studio to make their next album. They want to either come in and boom, bang, boom, be done, or they want to stay on the road. Why? Because they all keep telling Mr. Iovine and his team that the money is on the road.
Yes.
The money is not in the download. But what Mr. Iovine is saying is you need to come back, take the time off and work anyway, because one hand washes the other. And on top of that, he says you can't be quick with it. Because when you think of Bruce Springsteen, Pink Floyd, the biggest records of our time, they took 1, 2, 3 years to complete them, whereas the artist today does not want to take that time. So therefore, he's arguing that the time of our superstars have faded away. Our Taylor Swifts and Beyonce's, Katy Perry's, Rihanna's represent the last of a dying breed.
I disagree. But, you know, that's
Tell me why. Tell me why you disagree.
I disagree because there's always going to be people that are going to want to make music. There's always going to be a culture that wants that particular type of music.
Yeah, but the problem is he's saying that 40, and this is a fact, 40% of music consumption on YouTube, for example, is they're only paying out 4%. So the artist is only getting 4% on 40% of that. That's crazy. But yeah, right. I agree with him on that point.
Yeah, we all know that it's crazy. But again, none of us were invited to the table. The people that should have been making the decision, those companies like BMI, ASCAP, who's behind, should have been at that table when all these negotiations and all these prices and all this stuff were changing. You can't go back and put stuff back in the box after you left it out. So now people are scrambling and trying to get people to think consciously, oh, I need this, when you don't. You need what you want. And as we spoke before, it comes to now where people can go and choose certain things from albums or different sites and create their own playlists. So, you know, yeah, we're coming toward that. But again, everything is still free. Again, I always go back. Once everything was 99 cents on the internet, it destroyed. I'm not even talking about the stealing of music. I'm talking about the cost factor. You might as well put it at a penny. Because again, even still, even if that were the fact, and we and as an industry, we said mea culpa. We allowed the tech giants to be the biggest lobby here when it ought to have been the music labels. Now though, let's strike a much better deal going forward. Okay, we can't live on 99 cents a download. Let's increase it. But you know what the increase was after all these years? It's 2015 now. We're at $1.29. A whole 30 cents more per track. Are you serious? How am I supposed to live as an artist on an extra 30 cents? I can't live on the 99 cents. Even if you gave it all to me, and we already know we only get a fraction of a penny per stream. From a penny. You know, so I can see why, you know, Pharrell is all up in arms, but those are people that are accustomed to making buku money.
And they represent the 1% of the one that are making it.
That are making the money.
99% of us are not making it. It's not a livable wage. And even recently, I want to end with this. TrackSource just this morning has released an email. See, they have a withholding amount. They don't give you all of the entire amount of the besides their fee. They have what's called withholding. Every digital aggregator has some sort of withholding percentage. Okay, some are more than others. for the longest time, because Traxtor didn't seem to get a grip on just not only U.S. royalties but royalties abroad. They had to have an established withholding amount that was higher than probably they should have. So now this morning they're saying they're going to give some refunds back to labels because since 2009 they hadn't adjusted that, and they finally got to figuring out whatever that withholding amount will be, and the excess will come back to the label. So at least thank you, Traxtor, for doing something.
Well, they better have, because somebody was probably in there behind getting ready to sue them.
Well, they have been communicative. We've been getting correspondences over the years over this matter since 2009, like I'm saying. But yeah, I mean, they had to deal with it. It's only 2015.
Yeah, because if not, you got people coming at you with a class action lawsuit.
But this is not unlike the Tidals and Apples and such. All of them are dealing with how to pay out the artists versus how to keep their company viable and make the most profit. And with that, we're going to end our episode for tonight. We're going to come back. We're going to break down more. I want to talk about some of the recent activities going on with our house music brothers and sisters traveling abroad to South Africa. We're going to be talking about the latest with copyright and royalty boards. They got together again, and we're going to give an update about that. And we're going to talk more about why is Apple and Tidal in a fight, where in the middle of a festival, Drake was performing, the rapper Drake, and Apple cut their signal off, allegedly. We're going to break it down on future episodes.
Who cares? Anyway, before we go, mad shout outs to our sister Dawn Tallman, Bob Sinclair, and Glenn Thornton, #1 Billboard record, Feel the Vibe. Much love.
Much love. Slag Records. We love them very much. Have a good week and a good weekend. We'll see you next time right here on Capital Radio 91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sudan. Thanks for listening and watching.
Boom, 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 boom.
Peace.